We are not.
Are live.
Okay.
You're looking at camera, you're looking at the online.
All right.
audience, or
Hi, online audience. Thanks for joining us. Okay. So, welcome to Idaho Friends of You. My name is Wendy. I'm one of the uh, organizing teams that helps put these conversations on. Glad you can all join us. We're trying out this new live Zoom recording. So bear with us. First day of doing it. So, we'll work out the glitches as we can. For today, we have a conversation by Frank Monasterio, right? And I'll hand it over to him in a minute. But for now, we like to just kind of go around and do a little introduction on who's here. Um, let's see. For today, let's do who are you? How long have you been coming? And kind of if there's something about Jung uh, that you find really interesting, something that drew you here, maybe let us know. And yeah, we'll start it off over there, obviously, because you've got the mic. Turn mine off.
My name is Eric Johnson, and I've been coming out for about a year and some in the past sometimes. Jung, yeah, he saw big things, and he was pretty articulate, so that's why I like.
Hi, my name's Adrienne, and I've been coming here for almost a year. And one of the things I like best about Jung is that there's so much mystery in the work, having to find hints and decode dreams and imagination and those types of things to get insight into your psyche is just very fascinating and exciting to me.
My name's Tim, um, and I've been to one meeting prior to this early in the summer, and I'm here to learn about you. I don't know much about it.
Hi, my name's Jan. I'm part of the IFJ team and have been involved since Scott Heider formed the group almost 20 years ago now. And we're just so thrilled of the interest in our monthly gatherings. And primarily, I just learn from everyone here and the endless depth of Jung's ideas. So pass it to Kevin.
Thanks, Jen. I'm Kevin Laughlin. I got involved with this group about 14 years ago. My interest in Carl Jung stems from spiritual direction practice and dream work, and continue to do dream work and dream appreciation with groups. And tonight I was with another group, and they said, "Well, tell me about Jung," and I said, "Archetypes," and we had a long discussion around that. I think it's important that we continue our education. Every time I come, I learn something new. So thank you very much.
My name's Ernie Hamilton, and I've been coming for a few months, though I've attended a few meetings in years past. Um, I got interested in Jung because of a personal crisis in my life and looking for an understanding of that crisis and seeing what he could add to it or take from it. And so that my interest in Jung is stems from a personal interest in trying to unravel a little mystery in my life.
Hi, I'm Dee Childers, and I started coming to meetings probably 10 years ago with Lou. I think this is the first one this year that we've been to, though. And my interest is in Jung as I studied him in graduate school. I've been to Jungian analysis, and I enjoyed that very much. And particularly the topic tonight was inspiring to me, looking at the shadow side.
Lou Landry, and I don't know if I was involved right back when Scott started it, but probably shortly thereafter. And so I do remember Scott in those days, and they were really quite wonderful. And we miss him. Uh, and um, and let's see, in terms of Jung, uh, when I've looked at things cross-culturally and things in spiritual dimension, psychological dimensions, he makes the most sense of any of the thinkers, the most integrative thinker that I've found. And in Western thought. So uh, I'm interested in whatever we get for help to explicate, because sometimes it's dense and tough.
Sure. I'm Frank Monasterio. I have been a psychologist and a counselor, teacher, and in the course, because of my great interest in trying to understand my fellow human beings, I've tracked my interest across uh, culture, literature, art, Carl Jung, Sigmund Freud, to try to understand more about this life we're living.
All right, before we hand it over to Frank, there's a question about next month. So we usually meet on the third Thursday of each month, and the third Thursday of next month is the 22nd of December. So there are some people who still want to meet and talk or have some kind of something going on. And I just wanted to have, we're not going to hold you to it, I swear, but just kind of a raising of a hands of the folks who are going to be around and might be interested in meeting next. Oh, okay. So those of you who are interested in meeting next month, maybe when this is over, if you could just meet together for just like 5 minutes, kind of decide I won't be here. So do you mind just kind of taking the lead on that? So Jen will take the lead on that, and you can discuss what topic you might want or movie or theme you want to choose, and then I'll put it out to the rest of the email list. Because if there are 4 or 5 people who want to meet, then sure, it's worth it. I think it's the 21st.
Yeah.
The 21st. What did I say? 20th? 22nd. Oh, 21st. 21st to the people out there. Okay. All right. With no further ado, let's hand this off. I do want to say that I hope we have a couple of minutes at the end
I hope so too.
for some conversation and some questions. And so if anybody is online, you can feel free. The chat will be open, so you can write questions in there, and we'll keep an eye out for that. And for those of you that are here, we'll do the same thing. You know, if you have your questions, do you want people to hold their questions till the end?
Probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
Hold your questions till the end, and we'll have a conversation then. Yeah?
Very good.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy.
No further ado.
Thanks. It's the topic for the evening that I'm going to address is human destructiveness. And I became interested anew in destructiveness a few years ago when the level of destructive thought, the level of destructive speech, the level of destructive marketing, so to speak, in our society seems to have risen so dramatically. And certainly we see no lack of human destructiveness acting itself out in the wider world. Uh, Indeed, maybe more intensely than previously. Um, I had a great teacher in the Seattle area, one of many, and she was a social worker, and her name was Jay Gelber. And uh, she would say, she said once, I teach out of desperation. And what she meant by that was that she needs to understand something. And so she undertakes to teach about it. And so I've been doing some reworking, some rereading, and I'm not an expert on the subject of destructiveness. Um, in fact, I have had a hard time finding, well, there are books written on it, of course, but finding courses, lectures, those sorts of things on this subject. You know, I have not seen a lot in my many years of taking courses and going to lectures, and so, you know, I might just ask us, I might infringe on your privacy just to ask how many of us have taken a course on human destructiveness. How many of us have heard a lecture on destructiveness? Okay, how many of us? Oh, that's interesting. That's interesting. I have to add myself in the heard a very, very short talk that had to do with destructiveness. And I might ask, how many, I'm going to infringe on your privacy one more time. How many of us believe that destructiveness does not play a very important role in human life? That's interesting, isn't it? Because I can't imagine how many academic credits are reflected by the careers of those folks in the room, how many hours of self-education and self-study, very important, how many hours of confronting the issues of life. Yet none of us, or a few of us, have actually heard a talk about it. Or, you know, my one moment of discussion about the subject of presentation was when I was in Seattle. I went to a talk of the brown bag lunch at the Student Union building with an anthropology professor. He was going to talk to the group, and it was a talk about primates. And he said, you know, he began, if you're going to have a pet, you probably don't want to have a primate as your pet. They are highly destructive. They are nearly impossible to toilet train, on and on and on. And then he said, and human beings are primates. Yeah, there's a silence. And then I raised my hand and I said, if that's so, what hope is there for us? I can't remember his answer. It was not very satisfactory to me at the time. But I didn't stop thinking about this issue. And so this evening, I'm just going to throw out, it's not a comprehensive presentation on the subject. I don't pretend to that. But what I want to do is to present to you two different approaches, because I think they have a lot to do with some of the emotions, some of the incitement to conflict that I see going on all around me, that I can see with members of my family. Um, so, okay, I'm very interested in the way social systems contribute to destructiveness, and I am very interested in the archetypal contribution. And so I intend to touch on both through the thought of Erich Fromm, first of all, and his book, Escape from Freedom, and then through the work of the Jungian psychiatrist Jean Shinoda and her book, uh, Gods in Every Man. Uh, she is a Jungian psychiatrist, longtime teacher and practitioner, I think at the University of San Francisco State University Hospital. So, okay. Uh, Bolen, Bolen, first two names, Jean Shinoda, and the book, well, yes, to remove the post-it notes, the book is this, Gods in Every Man. There is a companion book called Goddesses in Every Woman, which actually came first. And then, by popular demand, she came back to write about Gods in Every Man. And so I'm going to canvass those two ideas, Erich Fromm, Escape from Freedom, and Jean Shinoda Bolen's Gods in Every Man, and as by way of hopefully giving you something to think about, something to reflect on. Okay. So Erich Fromm, psychoanalyst, medical doctor, came to the United States in 1941, fleeing from Hitler's Germany. And he was there to witness the firsthand decline of a society that was very cultured and very educated, uh, watch that decline into a world destructive force. British historians said that the, the greatest man-made event was World War II. So we have something there to think about. And Fromm, in his book Escape from Freedom, talks about freedom under two aspects, right? Freedom from and freedom to. And the idea of freedom from, as he presents it, was the freedom that came about as a result of revolutions in the United States and in Europe, liberal revolutions that made it possible for everyone to participate in the government, that made it possible for them to practice any religious faith that they might, um, that made it possible for them to resist imprisonment, except as determined by a court of law, in which they had the right to face their accuser. Um, so, freed from these limitations, the human being, he said, is cast into another challenge, in which, for so often, people miscarry. And that's the challenge of freedom too. Once we have these restrictions removed, people are more socially mobile. What then shall we do with our lives? You know, I think it was Tolstoy, right? How then shall we live? Quoted Luke's gospel. And so let's just step back. One of the themes that I'm going to address here with Erich Fromm, and we'll see it again with Jean Shinoda Bolen, is the theme of frustration, right? Frustration, aggression. There's been a lot of psychological research correlating those two. And so this is the medium by which through which I'm going to kind of, it's going to be the constant this evening. So frustration, aggression. We all have experienced a certain amount of frustration in our lives. Our parents had to frustrate us to some extent in order to prepare us to live in society with others. Now, the residue of anger that's left over from that can differ from person to person, depending upon how skillfully, with how much time, with how much cooperation, with how much respect we were treated in our individuality. But that's there. What I'm interested in talking about with Erich Fromm and Jean Shinoda Bolen is what builds on that to increase the level of frustration and increase the potential for destructiveness. Okay, freedom from, freedom to. And Erich Fromm's central position, I think, on his subject is that people do not know what they really want, and that this is a profound element in instigating and perpetuating violence of various kinds. I'm going to read from there. I'm going to read a bit of a passage from him. He said it very well in his book. To recognize this particular difficulty, modern man seems, if anything, to have too many wishes. And his only problem seems to be that, although he knows what he wants, he cannot have it. All our energy is spent for the purpose of getting what we want. And most people never question the premise of this activity, that they know their true wants. They do not stop to think whether the aims they are pursuing are something they themselves want. In school, they want to have good marks. As adults, they want to be more and more successful, to make more money, to have more prestige, to buy a better car, to go places, and so on. Yet, when they do stop to think in the midst of all of this frantic activity, the question may come to their minds: if I do get this new job, if I get this better car, if I can take this trip, what then? What is the use of it all? Is it really I who wants this? They feel that they have been bothered by these questions because they were tired and depressed, but people tend not to therefore face these questions. Modern man lives under the illusion that he knows what he wants, while what he actually knows is what he is supposed to want. In order to accept this, it is necessary to realize that to know what one really wants is not comparatively easy, as most people think, but one of the most difficult problems any human being has to solve. And Fromm teaches that the reason that people do not face these issues is because they are deeply frightening to them. They would just rather not. But that doesn't mean that there is not a residue of frustration from living some other life other than their own. We have a vast propaganda machine who tell us what we want. And there is, oh, I visited a friend of mine, I don't have cable TV. I visited a friend in Montana who does. And I was astonished at some of the things they're trying to teach people to want. I am afraid that I would mention some of them specifically, but for fear of giving offense, I won't. This is very startling. And so there is this whole network um, that is designed to implant wants. This increases frustration when people live without, they as the Bible says, they eat bread that does not nourish. They want bread, but what they get is a stone, and they're willing to accept that too often. I have become astonished at some of the people in my family, on my street, who come out and spout the most remarkable bile against people they have never met, people who have little to do with them, uh, people who it's very hard to imagine how their problems would be related to these people whom they are so antagonistic toward. And I don't think they are. I think to think of someone I've known for many years, does not lives here in Boise, someone I have known for many years. He has denied himself almost everything. He has no friends. He has no interests outside of his routine of work, this and that and the other. And he astonishingly the other day told me that that he was never going to vote for a Democrat again because he had so many things taken away from him. My observation is, and that he wanted to be left more alone. He's very low. I have a feeling that his discontent has little to do with the Democratic Party, has little to do with President Biden. And indeed, if he were to face what's confronting him, I think he would be very afraid indeed. So this is an element that I think does contribute massively to the discontent, which can be mobilized to be turned into destructiveness. Pass along now to the issue of archetypal destructiveness. We see that the various forms of discontent and destructiveness that can be mobilized uh, include those that we bring from childhood, those that we acquire from a society and from a way of thinking that distracts us from identifying what we really want. As they used to say, the heart's desire. There is another profound force of destructiveness which is in us. It's an archetype which we carry with us, which destructive leaders like the Hitler of Erich Fromm in his time can, if they get it right, they can mobilize that destructiveness to get support for themselves. And what are they doing? I think that they are mobilizing that archetypal destructiveness. And so I want to bring all attention on this account to the work of Jean Shinoda Bolen and the archetype of war that she discusses in her book, Gods in Every Man. Ares, Mars is the Roman version, is the god of war, the archetype representative of that potential, that capacity, that energy in us all. And I'd like to read just a few passages from her book. She starts her chapter on Ares, god of war, warrior, dancer, lover. She starts by quoting Ariana Stasinopoulos, the gods of Greece. Here's what Ariana says. Ares is the embodiment of aggression, has been one of the strongest forces working through human history. He is Mount Olympus action man, the god of war, strife, the restless and turbulent lover, thriving on conflict and rejoicing in the delight of battle. In Ares, we see our own aggression raw and bloody before civilization tempered or repressed it. Olin goes on in her own voice. Ares, as God, archetype, and man, is an image of masculine physical power, intensity, and immediate action. His heart and instincts literally move him to act and react with his body, unmindful of the consequences. His father Zeus disliked him and sided against him, just as the patriarchy devalues his attributes. It's important. We're going to come back to that issue. So Ares is devalued. He is suppressed. He is the problem child of Mount Olympus. Bolen says that the Greek myths come as close as any other, being our family story as a culture. And what a family it was. I mean, Ares, whom the Romans called Mars, was god of war, least respected and honored of the Olympians by the Greeks, Because of his irrationality and battle frenzy, Aries represented an uncontrolled lust for battle and bloodshed. In contrast, as Mars, the Romans held him in high regard, second only to Jupiter in importance. For them, he was protector of the community and the father of Romulus and Remus, the twin founders of Rome. So there we see another twin aspect of Aries. He can be the soldier who stands defending the community. Now, we see this often. These guys go and they win medals, and the citation says, "In conspicuous disregard for his own life, comma he." That's an aspect of Aries that Shinoda Bolin refers to, and that um, is another potential. Um, so um, one way the shadow was referred to earlier in our talk. One way of looking at this is that he is Zeus's shadow. You know, Zeus the ruler, the kind of pride, hard to keep some kind of order going in his extended family on Mount Olympus. And so he would be, yeah, damping down the rebellions and doing all of that. That underneath, however, there was another side to Zeus, and it's personified by um, by Aries. Aries is not a thinker. Aries of himself does not know when to quit. In order for there to be some guidance or limitation for this destructiveness, other archetypes need to be involved. The archetype of Zeus, the patriarchal ruler, the archetype of Athena, the archetype of knowledge and wisdom. Um, so, what happens? What happens when a ruler who is determined to advance himself doesn't care so much about promoting the community, but wants to advance himself, comes along and disinhibits the Aries in us, gives permission for the attacks to take place. Often they are attacks in the beginning on vulnerable minorities, people who are poorly positioned to fight back or defend themselves. Um, he gets a lot out of it. He finds that he gives people something to do that in a way they love. The disinhibition of our hatreds. Oh, I know who's responsible for my troubles now. It's you, or those people over there. People tend to like this. Um, it's like psychoanalysts would say that it's in a way akin to sex. This discharge of energy, uninhibited. Karl Marlantes wrote an interesting book. It's called What It's Like to Go to War. I don't know if you know Marlantes. He was a former Marine, had his very interesting personal history, a remarkable man. And when he was in training, I mean, I think you've seen some of these things, many of us. They use these things they call pugil stick, right? They put on the helmet on the Marine trainees and give him this stick that's padded on the end. And the instruction is go out and beat the devil out of this other guy who's similarly attired. And he said, it was amazing that felt good. There is a bonding experience when a manipulative ruler comes along and disinhibits and directs that kind of destructiveness. Um, his followers tend to idolize him. He has given permission to his followers to engage in this pleasurable activity. Hmm? And another thing he has given permission to his followers to do is, in my view, is escape inner conflict. Now I know who's responsible for my unhappiness. It's not me. It's you. It's you. It's those people over there. In my experience, people do not like very much having to deal with inner conflict. Okay, negotiating with someone is difficult. How much do I give up? How much do I keep to myself? This is not easy. Well, you can get rid of the negotiation when you know who's evil, when you can dehumanize them. Political figure the other day is quoted as saying that his political opponents here in the United States were vermin. So it's just and now they're not even people. So you can do what you want with them. And so it's interesting. Jonah Daniel Goldhagen has done uh, some great writing on the subject of genocide. His father was a survivor of the Holocaust. He and his father taught at Harvard. And the it, one of the genocides he looked at was the Rwanda genocide. Okay. Um, the Hutus in the Rwandan genocide, who were largely the perpetrators of this mass killing, did not wake up one morning and say, oh, we've lived with these people in peace for all these years. Let's go out and kill them today. Oh, yeah, that'd be a good idea. Let me get my kitchen knife. A lot of these murders were up close and personal. It's quite astonishing. What happened was this happened after uh, the Hutu leader Paragosa had gone on the radio to tell uh, to tell the Hutus how dangerous their Tutsi neighbors were, and we needed to eliminate them, and they did. So just to summarize, and then we can go to some discussion or whatever. Um, Developmental frustration contributes to human destructiveness. Personal frustration contributes to human destructiveness. And manipulation of the archetypal destructiveness can contribute greatly to destructiveness. Um, I have some things for you, and I have a couple of closing remarks, but maybe we will take some time to take a break. It's a lot of destructiveness we've marched through here. I mean, we've seen a lot, and it's a lot of it's not a very pretty picture. The These are things I think that it's helpful to know about. The results are often tragic at a personal level and at a societal level. I don't think they're inevitable. And what I'm thinking, what do you think, Wendy, Jan? Shall we take the formal presentation, so to speak, is now over pretty much. I have 1 or 2 minutes of closing remarks. Yeah, but let's take a while to kind of see if take a break and see if anyone, hopefully folks will have some observations that they will offer.
Frank, could you repeat the three types of frustration?
Developmental, and this is my own, this is
Yeah,
my own baling wire and duct tape.
right. I got the first and the last. Let me get the second one.
Okay. First one is developmental frustration, personal frustration. By that I mean the failure to achieve or even know what is our heart's real desire, what we truly want. And the last one is manipulation of archetypal destructiveness. So,
Yeah, I thank you for all of that. That was quite a lot to gather. So, but I do have a question. And then if anybody else has questions or comments, I'll just pass this around. Um, what it was making me think of was in the archetypes that I know of, things like the goddess Pele and Kali and Shiva. They all have destructive qualities, but they also have creation qualities. So, but those aren't necessarily the archetypes that we have been taught in our culture. So, Pele, for example, the goddess of volcanoes, right? We've got the volcanic activity is very destructive, but she's also the creation. She's what creates the islands and the soil, provides the land. So you have this understanding that destruction can be both harmful but also creative. And I'm just wondering, as you were reading through Aries, that's so lacking. And is there a offering of that creative energy as well with Aries?
indeed, there is. Aries, and as you say, it's a lot. And I was kind of aware of how much it was. Aries is the only one of the Olympians who really cared a lot about protecting and nurturing his children, as I understand it. And I think Bolin writes that in this chapter. So yes, there is a destructive, there is a protective element as well. And so when the Romans said Mars is the protector of the city of Rome, well, that's the whole world for the Romans. And so they focused on that aspect. And the soldier at his best is a protector of the community against the violence that may be directed against it. So yes, there is a fostering element. And there is a whole element of Aries, which is also sexual. And it's very interesting. Aries, we pair in mythology most often as a romantic couple. We pair Aries with Aphrodite. Okay. But a problem occurs because Aphrodite was not married to Aries. Aphrodite was married to Hephaestus. And there's a wonderful passage in the Iliad where Ares, where Ares and Aphrodite are discovered by Hephaestus in the act of love, and then Hephaestus has revenge. And I think it's Hermes who has to go to the Father God and say, look what Hephaestus has done to Ares. Can't you help out? And so then he sends Hermes back, and Hermes manages to sort of smooth things over. And so, yeah, there is certainly a creative element to Aries.
Well, and that just brings up in my mind, we're seeing a lot of this destructiveness happen politically in society across the globe. I wonder where that creative, like, can we also harness the creative nature of that destructiveness and instead of just the harm? And maybe where is that? And that's not a question for you. I don't expect you to answer it, but just in my own mind, I was just thinking about that.
I have a thought, Wendy, about that. One way in which that can be done is in a community, I think, by a community, is through non-manipulative leadership, through leadership which helps the community realize what it truly wants and what it truly will extend itself to create, to bring into existence, which did not formerly exist. That's one. There's others. Yes.
So in answer to the question of the creative element of the destructive power or destructive entity, the creative element would be in the opposition of it. As you were saying, the community responding.
Right. I thank you. Tell me your name.
Tim Kessinger.
Thank you, Tim. Appreciate that. I like that. Say a little bit more about that when folks have had their 2 bits.
Does everybody want to take a break, or would you rather keep talking? So, what's your preference? Keep talking? Okay. All right. Well, I have a question regarding, you're talking about a manipulative leader, a demagogue that um, people kind of as this mob consciousness will follow. And you touched a little bit on just now when you talked about, you know, needing a manipulative leader to ascertain what people really want. So how do you propose more specifically that this type of psychology is combated, when people are so susceptible to getting sucked into this anger and being victims and blaming others and yeah, it's always the victim mentality. I mean,
Right.
what right now, when in politics, when you know how does that uh, become countered?
It's a big question, a very important question. I have 2 thoughts about that, and this brings me to my concluding remarks. And then we can take up with more questions after that, but that does bring one answer to your question, Jan, is to Wendell says, stay home. You stay home too, he says at the end of one of his poems. I don't mean isolate yourself, stay away from people. I mean continue to engage in the work of identifying your true heart's desire and saying, dialoguing with that, perhaps in the many ways you can do that through understanding your dreams. His dreams contribute to us a ton. I mean, I've taught before, but it's been years. And so when I was kind of working up to this presentation, dreams would come back to me of times when I taught college class, when I taught high school classes, and they're saying something to me about what my purpose in life wants from me and encouraging me. So know your heart's desire. And if you know it and can articulate it, then engage in the question of what it wants from you. Do not participate. The negative way is don't participate in the communal madness that is destructive of your own purpose. And I have some gifts. I have this little exercise that I stole from one of my teachers Wes Winget, but I've credited him, so it's all right. It's called My Goal and Me, and it's a little self essay. We have some prompts, and and it is not foolproof. I mean, the batting average there is maybe 500, 750. It's not 1,000, but I think it's Ty Cobb who got the highest batting average in professional baseball at 366. So I think it does about as well as Ty Cobb, if not better. It's free of charge. Yeah, I brought 10 of them, and I had no idea how many might want it, but it's right over here. And on the further question, Jan, of what we can do about the communal aspect of it all, and to counter the destructiveness of leaders who are in it for themselves and their own advantage to the expense of others. I think there's been some excellent work done by some very thoughtful authors that, it's about, let me show you one. One that I like, and it's quite popular. He's been quite talked of. Is this little book on tyranny by Timothy Snyder. It has to do. It's 20 lessons from the 20th century, and Timothy Snyder is a historian at Yale, and his specialty is in tyranny, in authoritarianism in the 20th century. And so he has 20 lessons and they are things that we can do, that I can do, that you can do, that are supportive of community, and that are things that on a personal level we can do. And some of them are quite surprising. Let me read one of the topics here. Interesting, we don't think of this often in terms of solving these big questions. Lesson number 12, make eye contact and small talk. And it gives obey in advance, defend institutions, stand out, be kind to our language. You can do the bare bones edition, which I kind of like. There is also, a friend gave me the graphic edition. And so we have the same text, relatively speaking, but we have all kinds of illustrations. And I find that it's good for me. It's slightly more than 100 pages, 120 pages or so. It's good for me to pick it up every now and then and look at it because the points are direct and there are things you can forget. And so we can perhaps do more than we think. The larger questions, we can do on a larger scale. I think there are lots of initiatives going around. And there's initiative. One thing, if more people voted in our elections, we would probably have less extreme results and results that reflect more the kind of life that as a community we would like to have, where you can breathe the air, for example, and safety. So though that would be my answer for the moment. And I've got my little freebie deal handout thing, my goal and me. And so you're welcome to it.
Thank you. Thank you. Other questions?
I had a comment.
Here you go.
Uh, it's somewhat of reframing or just phrasing your heart's desire. That I've heard it forever as a child, but couldn't relate to it. And I was I was in a cab in San Francisco, and the cabbie was a Zen student, and he talked about responding to his innermost request. And that really had stuck with me, my innermost request. Um, so going back to some of my employed work uh, with young children and at Head Starts and watching the powerful energies of young people, of very young kids. So when you talk developmentally, I go back developmentally to 2 and 3 and 4 year olds, um, learning how to move from parallel play to integrated play with another, to the I, me, mine, it's all mine, and to be able to share toys. And then I think very apropos to what you've really, I think, put in a very central place, how do we handle the inevitable frustrations that life presents? Um, and how those frustrations, in fact, learning uh, how they, in fact, become teachers and not obstacles, that they're, in fact, so Rumi's poem, Guest House, is one of the most magnificent presentations of taking whatever comes to your door and using it as a guide from beyond. Uh, so what I see going on right now, and I don't mean this to be just politically, but just I see Donald Trump as acting out the American shadow, the misogyny, the racism, the greed, the um, the aggrandizement, and what is the diagnosis? Remind me. We have the diagnosis.
Narcissistic.
Narcissism. I mean, I studied narcissism. Until this, I never understood how destructive narcissism is and what unhappiness it brings to others when you have power. And also in my compassion for him, how do you ever have a moment of rest? You know, how in that it's a narcissism is absolutely bound. So going back developmentally, powerful energies, how do we learn to handle frustration? If in fact the world is me and now he is our retribution, um, as he has said, I am your retribution. So this outside kind of identification of there is no boundary, the boundary problem. Who am I? Where's my boundary? It's so unhappy, but it's also this projection of American unhappiness, our boundless manifest destiny. Is hit the wall. We hit the Pacific. We've hit the wall with consuming stuff. We've hit the wall, yeah, with just there isn't enough stuff there left to consume. So we're all in this one together. I mean, there are some pinpoints that have to be reined in. The tyranny has got to be reined in while we figure out some means. And I think these kinds of discussions are where people can come together to try to understand how we become doctors of our community and doctors of ourselves, with help.
Tell me your name.
Lou.
Lou. Thank you, Lou. Yes, indeed. Um, yes, thank you for that very much. Yeah, our discontent when it surfaces, when I'm triggered, one of the most important things for me is to know that, number one. And I have a little technique by which I take that knowledge and cycle it back into the deep psyche. And it's like it reminds me a little bit of Jung and alchemy, right? I mean, what the alchemists did so often was they would take elements as they understood them. They put them in a retort, cover the retort, and they it for a while and see what new thing would arise. Yeah, I really thank you so much. I appreciate that.
I have a just a comment that was so well said. So thank you for all of that. And it made me think of um, how Aries likes to pair with Aphrodite, right? So love. And when Kali, for that archetype, and the thing that stops her is Shiva laying down naked in front of her, and surrender and love. And just trying to think in my own mind when I'm faced with somebody who's dealing with their own frustrations and not trying to force them to repress their frustrations, because that repression is like pushing a ball under a pool in a pool. That ball just wants to pop back up harder and stronger. How can you face those frustrations, allow the person to articulate them, maybe even act on them, but be surrounded in a place of love? That's what.
Thank you, Wendy. I think I've been wondering about that myself. How do you? And I don't have an answer at this point. I'm having some opportunities though, because once people get these hateful and destructive fantasies, I'm noticing that they're often quite evangelistic about it, and they will come up and sometimes people who don't know me at all. Um, I've had a fellow, I went in to get my battery on my watch replaced into a jeweler shop, and a fellow who was just a customer insisted, while I was waiting for the jeweler to do the work, insisted on regaling me about how bad immigrants were. And I mean, I just want to get my battery fit. I mean, and so how to respond to that is a question that is active for me. Active.
That'll be our next talk.
Could be. See, and it's something worth working on because I'm getting a lot of this kind. People just volunteer these things, and it's remarkable.
Just a couple thoughts. One was your earlier in the talk, you talked about illusion. And I think that illusion is a pretty important aspect of the mirror that we're looking at in the United States right now. There are so many illusions available to us through our social media, through the societal interactions, and we're chasing the illusions that have been presented to us. And then the second point is there's something called the Karpman drama triangle. And in that triangle, you have a victim, persecutor, and a rescuer. And that reflects the narcissism that we're seeing in the mirror about ourselves and in the leaders that sometimes that we choose to pick. And what they suggest as a result of that Karpman drama triangle is that we become coaches, challengers, and creators. And the creator part, you triggered that in me when you had that discussion. Uh, Coach, challenger, and creator. And so when I'm looking in the mirror at myself, I say, how can I be a coach, a challenger, or a creator? And if I'm walking with you, I'm going to say, how can I coach Frank? How can I challenge him? Or can I challenge the creator in him? And that's been really helpful for some of the people that I've walked with in dealing with the narcissism and the mirrors that we're looking with.
Can you tell me the name of the triangle?
Hartman drama triangle.
Hartman drama.
Yeah, and I have a handout in my book here if you want to look at it later.
Okay.
You can do that.
Thank you so much.
But that's a solution has worked for me for the last 4 or 5 years. Is I try to be what am I called to be? A coach, a challenger, or a creator in this circumstance with this individual, and more importantly, to look at myself first before I respond.
Yeah.
Because if I respond out of anger or denial or frustration, that you're talking about, then it's my own stuff that's coming up. So that may be something for you to think about.
I love it. Hartman drama triangle. Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of a counselor of mine, someone I respect hugely, who said his goal was to bring to every interaction in life counseling principles. And, it sounds like there's some common motivation between that and, would you tell me your name again?
Kevin Laughlin.
Kevin. Thank you, Kevin Laughlin.
Are there other questions, comments, thoughts?
I have a concluding comment. Oh, is there?
All right.
Adriana?
If it's really a question, it's just something I've been thinking about. So I'm thinking about destructiveness and protection and the similarity between those two in Aries. Um, and how if any of us are in need of protection, or if any of our families are in need of protection, we want that protection and that destruction to be swift and to be strong and to be instinctual and even primal. Um, and it was making me think how when it benefits me, um, it's something I desire. But when it doesn't, when it's in service to someone else, it becomes completely unpalatable. Um, and so these traits that Aries encompasses, and of course he encompasses it to the extreme of the gods, right? But we all have them within us. It just makes me think of society right now and how that Aries type behavior, my opinion of it changes based on my proximity and my orientation to seeing it. Um, and how that may be unfair to people that would naturally embody those traits. And what does that do for people that maybe have that very masculine need to protect and to get between something or even to destroy, but in a positive way? And we don't have channels really in our society right now to channel destruction into a positive way. Now, tribally, back tens or thousands of years ago, we could chop down trees and protect community and do all these things that are so valuable and noble. But anymore, I think we see people playing video games where they can shoot things and destroy things. And there just isn't a channel for that anymore. And so sometimes I think it's easy to villainize some of these traits because we don't see them manifested in a positive way because we don't have channels anymore to see destruction as not purely negative thing.
I think that's one of the biggest challenges, perhaps, of our society, is to find ways to incorporate the needs and the legitimate desires of those who could easily otherwise turn to, who might be easily seduced by the destructive capacity. That's, Aries has that double side. Thank you, Adriana.
Think about
Push and hold.
Channeling aggressiveness into sports as a healthy way to have competition. But lately, there's been some, really disturbing um, events, professional level sports that have gone over the edge of aggressiveness. Even just a couple nights ago in a basketball game, one of the competitors grabbed the other guy in a chokehold, and there was video of that. And of course he was removed from the game and everything. But just to, they show that kind of video over and over and over of pretty significant
Oh,
threat of a chokehold, or even with this ice hockey player that passed because of the slice to his neck, that someone was arrested for that. And there was question about intent on that. So, that is just so disturbing when this organized way of aggression, you know, gets to this kind of level of violence. I just find that very disturbing. And I don't, to me, it's like just a symbol of all the frustration and the level of anger and um, just the energy that's happening right now. um, so that, and then, yeah, the conflict in Israel. Um, a year ago, I was there and just returning from a trip. And to just imagine, we were within probably 20 miles of Gaza, Jerusalem, um, traveling around the country, being told, of the safety due to the Iron Dome and all of this, and the travelers you're safe, but feeling all the tension there between all of the different ethnic groups, and we had a Christian Palestinian guide, and he was fascinating. He grew up in Jerusalem, but he would have an interaction with an Israeli that was tense about an issue, and he would say over and over, "You are not above me. You are not above me." That was his feeling, his whole life as a Palestinian, to be made lower than. And then to just imagine, when you talk about frustration and anger, just this relentless level of domination and everything, and just to see how this has all blown up. It's just unfathomable in this small geographical area to imagine that level of tension for people and how they cope. And I don't know. Anyway, when you were this whole subject, is yeah, it's almost surreal.
Watch the public television news fairly regularly, uh, PBS NewsHour, and their boilerplate visual has been war in the Holy Land, and I just kind of thought that was ironic.
Um, so I have one more thought too, which goes back to what you were saying about how you were hoping people would come to your aid when you need that, right? And the same thing when we're thinking about Israel. I mean, good Lord, what happened there, would make anybody upset on both sides of both sides. And so I'm wondering, when you're challenging something, when you're breaking down a system of oppression, right? When you're destroying a system, in my mind, the definition of destructiveness is something that creates harm. It creates harm when it destroys something. And I'm wondering if there's a way that we can destroy things without creating harm. Well, and so what goes to mind is like Martin Luther King, and or um, other South Africa, apartheid in South Africa. Can we destroy unfair systems without creating harm? Great harm. Maybe you will always create harm, but maybe you can lessen harm. S- So that great topic. Obviously deep topic that gives us all a lot to think about. Um,
You have asked one of the questions of the ages, Wendy. I mean, that's such a profound question.
well, I don't have any solutions, so. So, thank you.
There we go.
Um, I think it was Gandhi who said, if it becomes an eye for an eye, then we're both become blind. And the whole ahimsa was non-cooperation with the evil, with the oppressor, and it wasn't meeting it with like kind. And so, if you look at all the training uh, that Dr. King did uh, with the folks that were going to be involved in nonviolence, there was a lot of training, and so it was about deep reflection and coming out of the Christian tradition, and what is turning the other cheek, what is it not to propagate evil, and so in some ways um, what to do is would be incumbent upon all of us to learn, am I committed to a nonviolent approach to violence, and am I willing to accept um, being beaten and perhaps being killed. uh, it's that restraint of that acting out, which we think our protection is to act out, and all of the images that we've been fed forever is an acting out. I've been watching old cowboy movies, and the white hats were just a faster gun, but it was the gun, and and these were the rescuers, and we're going to meet gun to gun, and I'm just faster than you. And most of them, the good guy was the faster guy because, of course, God was on his side, directing his bullets. Um, but I think culturally, the way out we have witnessed that partly in our lives with what happened in India. It was very hard for them to hold to the nonviolent tradition as they became a country. It's been very hard for South Africa to keep Nelson Mandela's approach alive. We've certainly lost Dr. King and lost a lot of steam in our movement. But we've had some wonderful examples at a large social scale. And the question is, do we believe it?
Well, Louis, is that right? Louis, I, for me, watching some of those black and white movies, the documentaries about the training of the nonviolent resistors to go into the South, it's just harrowing. And yeah, does I mean, it's amazing. Do we believe it? It's a big question that comes like, could I do that? Big question. Yeah. I will say one thing, just an observation. One of the important things I think to feed into um, construction is for all of us to keep coming to this group, because here we can talk about these things with others who are interested in talking about them. And so I encourage continued participation. I love the participation we've had this evening.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Um, yeah, you want to just hand those out? I think everybody will want one.
Okay. I have. Okay.
And if you don't get one, or if there's people online that want one, we'll see if we can get it and
We'll
put
do it.
put it out on the email list.
We'll put it out on the email list, or maybe folks who, if we run out,
Yeah.
uh, I would be more likely to do it snail mail, probably, because I've kind of patched some
Don't
things
get too
together.
close to that speaker. There you go.
We have.
I would love one, but
So let
okay.
me know your.
I gave him one. Okay.
Oh, okay.
Perfect. Did you have something to say? Okay. So we forgot to introduce one person who is becoming even more and more important here. as we are working when you get a chance and you're not staring at the screen. Okay, well, do it later. Lewis, who's bringing us into the 20th century, 21st, by getting us online. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. I hope you stay after just a little bit if you're interested in meeting next month. Um, and then there will be an email that goes out next month about that. And included with that will be the idea of what's going to happen in July or in January. So, thank you again. And
You are welcome. You are welcome. Come on.